I might have known you'd do that, right?
This is
Well, at least that's going to be the thumbnail of the live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask a Leader. Where some dude in sunglasses and John.
it'll make people click.
So, just in case
Unbelievable.
anybody that doesn't know who these two gentlemen are, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and not make a botch of it. So, Adam, would you like to go first? It's been a while in the making, so you're on. You're up.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Gav. I'm just some bloke, mate, just that likes a bit of Aussie torture. Yeah, right. Where do we start? Okay. Yeah, created a framework of everything I saw wrong in the market for most positions within business operating systems. Called that closed circuit selling. Maybe 4 years, people had no idea what I was talking about. Enter George, and now people do.
It's very succinct.
Adam's giving me Adam's giving me a lot of credit. I will say Adam's one of the best out there that I've seen who understands like how sales, marketing, and CS all fit together, and he's got a great framework that he came out from the sales side, which really pieced a lot of this together. And actually, interestingly, Adam and I reached quite similar conclusions around how sales, marketing, and customer success weren't really working and weren't getting along. But he did it from the sales side and reached, I suppose, the same conclusions that I did from the marketing side. Namely, we're working in opposition to each other. We're torching the market. We're churning and burning. We're incentivized poorly. And we all need to come back together with some simple frameworks, go back to the fundamentals and start working together again. And so really between Gav, yourself, myself and Adam, we've got CS, sales and marketing all together. And I like to call us the Alliance of the Reasonable because I think what we say, I think what we say, like we're not out there trying to sell magic potions. We're not selling silver bullets. We're selling and talking about just good fundamentals that need to come back into practice before we layer on this fancy tools, tech, and AI.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think I saw a post this morning which sort of summed it up. I'm just going to read this for everybody, just in case. So the things marketers say that make me want to, and there's, I think, 3 or 4 sick emojis after that. We reach the right people with the right message at the right time. What are you smoking is all I would say. So with that, perhaps would Adam, would you like to comment on that one? Because I think it sort of sums up my experience with marketing, because I'm in tech. I've spent 30 odd years in tech, and we see marketing as something that basically sales asks for brochures of, which are repeatedly useless, and our sales cycles are horrendously long for our services, which would be sort of like 6 or 7 figures. So they're not cheap. It's like buying a mansion when you get one of these things through the door, but it does take a long time. So maybe to that short post comment from George, what would you like to say to that?
I think 60% of the time it works 100% of the time.
He's not been helpful here, George.
He hasn't at all.
I think that to change the market's perception of sales, marketing, and customer success being at each other, the shortest route to do that is to reignite the fire of what those connective actions across the funnel are. And that is the shortcut to success. So instead of there being a market perception of marketers just sit in the corner and makes things pretty and sales get out there and talk people out of stuff, maybe we could start building the bridge of what that should look like. And I think that our joint frameworks obviously build us into a position to be able to do that, which will change the market perception, hopefully. Big goal.
Well, there's nothing without some vision. The difference is you're working on it to make a reality, I think. And what would you say to that, George? I mean, from your perspective, obviously you're really on sort of on the covers. I think you've been to a symposium or something recently where you'd spoken on stage.
Yeah. We were at the Digital Marketers Australia conference recently, and we were presenting on what we call a new way to do demand generation. But to be honest, it's really the old way to do demand generation. It's about going back to those fundamentals. I think demand generation, the title itself, has taken on a bit of a role is trying to act as a bit of a connective tissue between brand and sales, and pulling all of that all together. And what we were really there speaking to, mostly marketers, some business owners, we're up there just urging them to look at their existing go-to-market strategy, try and look beyond just capturing leads and start to look at the, I suppose, how efficient and effective that motion is itself. And there's a lot of costs that people don't take into account, like the time it takes for sales to service so many different leads. And are we really going about this the right way? Because I think in order for there to be a change, Gav, we need to acknowledge as a business that there's a problem first. And I think a lot of businesses aren't acknowledging that problem initially. And so that's what we were really trying to urge people to do, is to find the problem. And then we start to explain, well, why has this problem even come about? And it gets back to a fundamental misalignment and misunderstanding of how people actually buy. And this fictional idea that we can force people through a funnel, that we can take these actions, and that it can all just, work beautifully for us, when in fact the buying journey is complex, it takes time, but there's some simple things we can do to help the buyer along the way.
So I'm curious, just listening to a friend of ours, Alan Hill, and he'd say that insights belongs in there somewhere. So where do you think that fits into that process?
Yeah, 100%. And I love Alan. I think he's one of the best at this. And he and I really agree that when you're forming a go-to-market strategy, first thing you should do, align with leadership, run the 80-20 on your business to find out who actually are our best customers. Where do we want that next book of business to come from? Because we've all got limited time, budget, energy, and we need to allocate those to a specific market if we're going to have an outsized impact on that market. So 80-20 analysis to identify who those people are. And then, as Alan said, it's about collecting actual insights from them. And I think the best way to do that in B2B is through customer interviews. And that is literally speaking to your customers in a systematic way to find out everything that you need to about their greatest pains, why they chose you over the competition, what their key touch points were in the buying journey, why they decided to trust you, what that buying committee looked like. So then when we go to actually create our go-to-market plan, it's informed by insights, not guesses. The alternative, Gav, what most people are doing out there, and what I used to do, I'll say I used to do it as a marketer. We used to say, oh, let's see what our competitors are doing. Let's Google a whole lot of stuff of what's going on in the industry. Let's test this messaging. Let's run some Facebook ads or some LinkedIn ads, and whichever one gets the highest click-through rate, oh, that must be the message that's important to them. Let's go with that. And you're just guessing, and you're just wasting a ton of advertising money. You're wasting a ton of budget rather than starting with real proper insights.
And I suppose that there's a good segue to sort of ask Adam's sort of perspective, because I mean, obviously you've been on the sales side. So what's that look like to you, Adam? And what have you seen in the past that's as maybe a concrete example where you can say, okay, this happened. Obviously, getting rid of names. What it looks like when it doesn't work, and then what the opposite looks like, what George is talking about.
Yeah, good segue there, Gav. So I'm trying to, yeah, all right. I'm just thinking about how
it's early in the morning. We know. He hasn't done his question.
So what happens if you don't do it that way? You're going to need a whole heap of people to obviously service the wheel in terms of contacts to meetings to closed opportunities. But the fundamental of finding your next best customers from the ones you already have and doing that analysis, as George said, every single time you go to do a customer service or a CS handover, they will churn. They will churn. Because they have no reason to stay with you in the first place. So yeah, that's definitely what will happen. That is what does happen. And further to that, what we're now seeing in the market is a whole heap of companies that have never seen what good looks like, from business development to customer success. And that all comes down to doing a live quoting day where you're talking about what it would look like to work with us, walking them through the process, introducing them to everyone who's going to be a part of that. But then also, Gav, then speaking to what it looks like in service delivery. So how often do we see you, Gavin? What does that look like? Who are your backup contacts? Right down to parking, what you need for the QBRs, what your KPIs look like. Are there any additional sites, etc., like that? These plans now generally don't happen in most organizations. I can't tell you why that they stopped doing that, but this is why we're seeing a high amount of churn. Even Chris Walker talks about after 6 weeks, they're seeing from the data that they have that customers churn. You look at what Adam's saying in RB2B, they have a high churn rate, but that's tech, and they've never had like a proper CS plan in place because they sell off of subscription, not off of contract. So there's a lot of fundamentals there that we could take across industry sector that would solve this problem. But as George said, the first step is accountability, to understand that they have that problem. And then the second part of that is what I started talking about 5 years ago. We're going to see a lot of people that are heads of these departments right now that are going to double down on the silly because they want to make sure that they've got patch relevance, i.e. keeping in control of maintaining their jobs, not doing what works for the organization. So if any part of those processes then make their role obsolete or show the boss that they know less than what they should, they'll be a little bit in troubled waters.
I think that's relevant for once you get to larger organizations. It's not just about the marketing and the message and all the rest of the stuff. You're actually talking about people's livelihoods. Mm-hmm. So the typical thing they'll do is the safe thing rather than the sensible, which is why I love your pictures, George, because quite frankly, that just says, okay, you may be doing the safe and the sensible, but if it's this simple, why not do this? Mm-hmm. Which then means you will actually win for your organization and for yourself. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people out there trying to make everything sound more complicated than it is, whether that be to sell their latest piece of technology or to sell their services. At the end of the day, we are just trying to answer questions that buyers have. There should be a market for your existing service or product. So find that market, speak to people who have bought from you in the past, or get connected with people who have bought something similar. Find out, as we said, like what that buying journey looks like. Go one step further and start to catalog that market. And that's where I think Adam brought in a missing piece for us as well. And then all of a sudden you find out the recipe for success. Map that to a simple framework. Like we have a simple framework that maps the buying journey. It answers questions along each stage. And then we don't know exactly where someone is within that stage. So marketing's job is on a one-to-many and a one-to-few basis to get the key information in front of people as much as possible. So if the right person sees it at the right time, fantastic, but we can't control when that is. And sales is excellent at having those conversations on a one-to-one level. And I'll let Adam talk about what cataloging the market is, but because early on, when you're setting those foundations, you're cataloging the market, you're going to understand who in your next target list you should prioritize. You're going to understand what's important to them, and you're going to come away with the recipe for success to then circle back and take to them when the time is right.
I am just going to interrupt everybody for a second. Adam is sniffing because he has hay fever, just so it's clear, everybody on the live. Okay. Just so it's clear. I know it's the internet, so I'm just telling you.
You didn't say.
Well, I'm a good boy drinking my peppermint tea.
You didn't say that we're in London.
Coffee. With that, Adam, would you like to answer the question?
I feel like I've got to get going. Yeah, no. George raises a really good point, and it's interesting to me the amount of companies that obviously with the model change that started at Oracle in 2008, and then that obviously accelerated by Aaron Ross in 2011 by Sell the Meeting and Sales-Led Growth. All of the fundamentals that were connected from business development to marketing to customer success kind of got pushed to the wayside. So we're in an interesting position right now where historically, in most organizations before then, it was business development, but it could have also been a marketing development officer that would have got that information, where companies would just literally approach companies, find out who the key decision maker was, and ask them questions about what they're doing to solve this problem, and that would lead into a contract discussion. So Gavin, like, who are you using for this? You would ask them if they say they've already got a supplier, things like, well, what is it okay that I asked you what you like about it? And that generally would bring the barrier of entry down low enough to be able to have more of a discussion around what they're currently paying, how long they've been in a fixed contract for, when that might be up for tender, what it would take for them to change, how often they actually audit their existing process versus their current market. Would they be open to coming back within 4 to 6 weeks? That then gives you the recipe to go over to George's team and say, hey, man, do you reckon we could build some modeling around this? And given that we've already spoken to other feedback loops with personas that are the same, could we also build some educational content to close off on those objections? So when I go back to these people, it's more likely they're going to invite us to the process, whether that be the RFP, the formal tender, a bid process, or just straight into a deal room. That across industry sector seems to be the missing link between understanding job function between sales and marketing, and that would realign people's perception on what they are and take marketing back into doing proper marketing and away from marketing. So sales telling them that they're just making things pretty when they're actually far more valuable than that. Because if that's done right, that will lead you straight into the deal room. We will have a chance to obviously discuss things like a live quoting day, which is like a massive proposal, presentation, demo day, etc. Where if that goes well from that room, you'll be able to then segue into what we talked about before, which is the communication plan handover and what it looks like to work with that client. But that all stems from that one motion of cataloging the market. And the other component of that, sorry, my nose is real bad. The component of that is understanding the contract value versus the potential contract value of that company. And is that more than the operating costs of bums in seats, which is what George spoke to earlier? If it's not, you would then know that you wouldn't go further into the process. So these are the missing components of what we now don't see at market. But only this morning, I was speaking with a national recruiter here, and they are blown away with the amount of companies that don't understand that is a pillar of a fundamental, and they still do this every day. So, yeah.
Sorry. I'm maybe just me being old and cranky. Sorry, that was today.
Yes, today. Yep. It's like
I just need to go off camera and puke. So just to be clear where I come at this, folks, is when that process doesn't work, right? If you're looking for what I call super referrers, right? Those are the people that actually make a business, because they're the ones that go out and tell their business friends, this lot know what they're talking about, and this service actually delivers what it says it does. Now, I know that sounds rather basic, but that simple thing, and what most people don't realize, is if that doesn't work properly and marketing isn't in on the act and sales too, then what happens off the back end is then when it comes to renewals or retention, they then walk away literally. They make that decision in that time period. So from the point where they sign the contract to where they actually then go, okay, we're in service, we're happy. in that time space, which most people don't know, that is going to affect their renewal decision in however many months or years it's then up for renewal, which I used to think was crackers until I finally got some data on this from from a venture capitalist firm. Won't mention names here, but they're not small. And I think that the process that you guys talk about, I love that, because that we can take what we've got from sales and marketing, and then it's a seamless process, rather than it being one of the conversations I usually have to have, which is explaining the contract to the customer and actually what's important in that thing. And that's usually a very difficult conversation. But from doing what you guys are suggesting, I know for a fact I've seen it work properly. That looks amazing. So I've also seen the worst thing, which is handovers in 15 minutes, etc. So I suppose, George, practically, because there's always this disconnect between people saying, right, so how do we actually measure marketing and then make it relevant to sales, so that then the C-suite isn't going, what are you lot doing? Maybe one for you, George, and I'll come to Adam.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got an opinion on this.
Probably on the measurement side from marketing. Look, there's this side that the marketers probably look at a little more, which can be a little harder to bring leadership around to. But we look at it generally in 3 tiers that you might look at. If you're rolling out a marketing program to genuinely help to educate that market that you've chosen and start to build relationships with them, then you don't want to tie yourself necessarily to lead gen metrics, because they're no indication that you're actually making an impact with that market. You want to look for more leading indicators, like, are we actually starting to attract more of our ideal customers, more of that market that we set out to attract? Are we attracting more of them to our assets? Are they resonating with our message? Are they engaging with our educational content? So this is probably like a tier 3 metric that we would say, more of a leading indicator to revenue. When sales are having conversations with targets, are they mentioning that they came across us through our marketing assets, through our webinars, through our podcast, whatever it might be? And the goal is to just keep attracting more and more of those ICP each month. Tier 2, you might start to see what looks like more opportunities. That might be marketing sourced, it might not be. If it's got a high contract value, odds are it's probably not going to be marketing sourced. But you can be able to show that marketing has had some influence on that particular deal, that you have started to build relationships with key people within that buying committee. And then you're working with sales to also go ahead, catalog it, and then identify those people who are more likely to be ready to buy. And what I really love about where Adam says catalog the market is, I think it solves that question that so many marketers kind of get asked and want to answer themselves, which is, of the 100% of the market, we know that roughly maybe 5% is in market at any given time, but who the bloody hell are they? We could go and purchase intent data from Bombora or something that's probably not going to be overly accurate, or you take simple actions like Adam has suggested, catalog the market, and then you understand, okay, this 5% are in market.
Just for the normal people, what does that actually mean? Cataloging the market.
Catalog. Yeah, Adam, you're better at explaining cataloging the market. Go ahead.
So it's overly simplistic. So there's nothing shiny here. It's literally just having voice of the customer conversations with who you think will be in market for your solution, based on, it could even be not going against marketing tactics here, but it could also be without going against your next best customers. You still would be able to do those feedback loops with who you would like them to be. And what you'll find is, if they're not in market for your service, or they don't have that category of demand for that product, you would also be able to maybe put them in touch with who would be, and then play that forward. So to real simple, it was just contacting who those customers or who those targets are, asking them who they're using for XYZ, asking them what they like about it, asking them how often they audit their current offering versus what they would like it to be, or what is in market, or what's possible at market, asking them through in a fixed term contract, and then obviously asking for permission to come back and show them at any point in time if anything's changed. So that is vitally important, because then you're going to know who's going to be in market, when they're going to be in market, and you can put them in your diary. You can go and walk that information over to marketing, and we can together work on what those proposals would be to be able to get to the deal room. And also it's going to tell you who, like when, like as George said, within the 95 and 5, who's going to be in market and when they're going to be and what it would take. So yeah, it's honestly
and then marketing's role is, you know, working with sales to get that educational content in front of those 5% who are in market or about to come up in market, and then also getting in front of the other 95% and getting that 5 stages of awareness content that's mapped to their buying journey out in front of them consistently to generate awareness of the brand, awareness of the problem, and lead them to the logical conclusion that you guys are the perfect people to fix it. And once you have that piece in place, Gav, I think it starts to remove some of those conversations around, you know, fighting over attribution and marketing sourced versus marketing influenced. Was it sales? Was it marketing? We have a very defined list of accounts that we're going after. Marketing's role is clear, sales's role is clear, and we're working together to win these targets over. And some of the best teams that we're working with and that we've seen implement this are looking to have, you know, bonuses when revenue goals are hit, not just for sales and marketing, but for sales, marketing, and customer success, everyone all together, because we don't want to fight over who's done what, because that doesn't incentivize the right behavior.
Exactly right. And also, it will also give you a pretty clear indication of just if. So hang on, let me reframe. As opposed to the sales-led growth methodology, this would also give you an indication of targeting the next tier underneath the 5% who in the buy now mode, right? So what you want to be able to do is be able to heavily educate those people, as George said, for the people that are going to be in market within the next 3 to 6 months. And the only way you're going to find that out is by asking them.
Yeah. I mean, I think also from the sort of delivering CX side, I think there's a thing that we forget is once we've got customers actually on board, we should always be listening for, are they talking to their friends? Is there anybody else that would like to, you know, they will know people that know people. And this is something that many people overlook, and they just sit there and go, you know, have loads of conversations with the customer, and none of that gets back to sales and marketing at all, which would be really helpful when it comes to perhaps what Alan would call voice of customer. But it's also, you know, them actively asking and saying, okay, is there anybody else you know, if they like something that we're doing? And then that helps build that list, and you're confident then you're not just, you know, sort of scattergunning the whole thing. What I think you were talking, there was something you were talking about scorched earth, and it's something that terrifies me. And I think in this modern day and age, people seem to think that that's a solution. So I'd like to hear both your opinions on that type of thing. So, George, maybe you want to go first.
Is this on the scattergun spray and pray?
Yeah.
Method that most people are using?
Yeah, because I mean, once you've got a list, if you've, you know, might be 200-300, say, then how do you approach that rather than just going out and saying, right, some random people that we've picked?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's why it so much comes down to really defining who those best customers are. So once you've got that list, and, you know, as you said, you keep adding to that list over time, you get that feedback from customer success with potential referrals and everything like that. Once you have a really solid list, I mean, the way that some might approach it is they take that scattergun approach and they're just calling everyone and trying to find that needle in the haystack that is ready to buy now. And they'll do that, you know, with maybe an SDR motion, someone who is not a subject matter expert, doesn't have any real kind of technical expertise, doesn't have a lot of industry expertise. And so if they get on the phone with a decision maker or a champion, they can't have a particularly well-educated conversation. They are blasting the inbox of important people within that organization as well. They are running ads to buy now in front of probably their whole buying committee. But they're not thinking about the fact that these might actually be creating negative touch points as well. And that if you're not actually trying to come to that organization showing that you've understood their problems, that it's not going to resonate with them. And then all you're doing is trying to take their time and attention away from them, which is, I think, overall like a negative impact. And all of a sudden you've blasted through that whole list, and then you've got to go on to the next one. But everyone would prefer to sit behind their computer and like spray and pray the market and go as wide as possible and find that needle in the haystack. But they're not really looking at how efficient that is, and also how bad that is for their brand in general to be burning through the market.
I think that people seem to, everybody understands positive compounding, aka Warren Buffett. But I don't think people understand just how bad it is. So I've experienced this in the past, where we've literally had somebody that was in the industry. It isn't, although people seem to think this, that markets are absolutely massive. I mean, there's 5.5 million businesses in the UK alone, but a particular addressable market that you're going to be then selling to, and you think about, okay, that's just then 5%. They're going to be talking to each other. And if one or two people that are, in quotes, have influence, that can be a very bad thing. I mean, Adam, have you got maybe a specific that you could speak to about something like that?
From like a super referral perspective, or?
Yeah, where somebody is literally saying, right, this lot, nah. And what sort of effect that can have on your business.
So, I've got to be careful here.
Yeah, we have to be careful with names. I
was previously tasked with obtaining a shiny list of clients in an industry sector where the name had previously been tarnished so bad that people would just literally hang up if you said you were from that company. That was pretty hard to get around, and that was probably only navigated by me being a little bit fancy with some of the offers in terms of known objections and educational content made into animation videos. And I literally just called those companies back and asked, could I show them what I put together for them? And then after that, they can decide whether it's relevant or not. And that luckily worked as a door opener to get past the initial, no, we cannot do business with that company ever, because they were so burned in the past. Don't think for a second that doesn't happen. It's very, very easy for that to be, your name be mud at market, where it's then mathematically impossible for your business development reps to meet their target.
Yeah, I'd agree. With that depressing topic, should we move on to something else?
I think, sorry, Gav, just to put it maybe into perspective, Gav, just to put it into perspective a little more for people. Everyone thinks that like the total addressable market is everyone who can buy something from them, and that's who they try to target. But the reality is, like, out of your total addressable market, you've got to have an ideal customer within that, which is already a subset of the market. Then within that, if the research shows that 95% of people in that market are not ready to buy right now, and 5% are, well, then we're already down to trying to find that 5% of that ICP that are actively looking to buy. Then you layer on top the research from Bain that shows that 8 out of 10 people will not buy from you if they haven't heard about you before day one of looking for a product or solution. That means that only 2 out of 10, 20% of people will even talk to you if they haven't heard about you when they start making that search. So let's just say your ICP has 100 people in it. 5 people are looking to buy right now. 20% of those are willing to talk to you. That's one person. And then if you add in the negative touch points of blasting the market and making a negative impression on people because you don't have an ICP fit and you're not able to deliver, I guarantee it's going to be even smaller than that. So just starting with 100, you end up at less than 1. And that's why it feels like trying to find a needle in a haystack, because it is.
Couldn't say better.
That one.
Rant over. Rant over.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why George is the best at what he does, and we can just leave it there.
Right, and I suppose we're just going to do a quick cut. I'm going to talk about the sponsor, which is something more positive.
And we'll be back after a few positive words.
So, I'm just going to take you guys off screen for a sec, and I'm just going to making sure you're not associating you with the incorrect people. Right, a second. Okay, so let's do this. So, as typically usual, and George knows this from me, the technical stuff is not working, which is a bit of a joke. Right, and now for something completely different. The sponsor for Ask a Leader, the live sessions at Speculo. Speculo's success is based on providing expert advice in a way that any company, big or small, can afford. Speculo charges by the hour, which makes it easy for different kinds of organizations to get the assist they need while keeping tight rein on their costs. And everybody knows me, I'm from Yorkshire, I like that, while utilizing experts in their fields. And they offer that in the IT, cybersecurity, PMO, and transformation space. They provide as a service, consulting or resource augmentation models. And what makes them stand out? Well, they integrate and match the client's pace and implementation needs. And they're not just another same old service. They get involved, make sure they're they're making the offers to the right fits for their individual clients. And with that, you can go to speculoconsulting.com. That is Speculo, SPECULO consulting.com. And with that, back to the slightly depressing conversation.
But Gav, there is hope. I think just everything we've spoken about till now just shows why there's no such thing as an overnight success. Because it takes time to find all this stuff out. It takes time to buy the bullshit that everyone else is selling you, to get burnt, and then to realize you just got to go back to doing the fundamentals. And B2B is about, I think it's more about people, not platforms. And there's just some simple systems that Adam and I try and give people to try and understand that and prioritize as much as possible.
I suppose that's leads me to the one question, which I think maybe a lot of people come with this type of thing, is then, so how do we actually get started? Because they'll have been doing it the way I call them, no, I better not, but I might get sued for that. Salesforce, the way they do things with the bookings, etc., which worked back in 2011, right? Doesn't really work anymore in IT. So how would somebody get started then if they are going to go for those fundamentals? And would it be all in, or would it be gradual, or how would you suggest to do that?
Yeah, I think ultimately there probably needs to be, as we said, an acknowledgement from leadership that what they're currently doing isn't working, and a lot of that will come down to examining your existing go-to-market motion and seeing, like, what is it costing us and what kind of return are we getting? And if your existing go-to-market motion looks great, I say fantastic. No need to change it. Keep doing what you're doing. If lead generation in the existing SDR, AE setup you have is working for your business and you can show that and it's working for customer success, like, go ahead and do that. But if you examine it, run the numbers, and it's not, well, then we have a problem. And then what we normally propose is, rather than overhauling everything overnight, which you just can't, right? You can't go cold turkey on what you're doing. We suggest launching a pilot program within the organization where you select really like one segment, one product, probably get like one small team, someone from sales, from marketing, to go and roll out a program that aligns with all these fundamentals that Adam and I talk about. And that really happens in 3 major stages. The first stage is really deeply understanding that segment that you want to target, doing those interviews to understand what their buying journey looks like and everything about them. So then we can create a roadmap of, well, these are all the questions that they're going to have. You do the cataloging of the market to understand who's in market versus out of market. You understand what's important to their business. Then you're able to then, in stage 2, create that content that attracts the 95% that are out of market, builds relationships with them, and then work with sales on accelerating that relationship with those 5% who are in market, who have now also given you permission to circle back to them as well. And so those are really the 2 core stages that we talk about. And there are simple ways to get that information and to put all of this into process.
And I suppose that's a good one for you, Adam, just how that feels from a sales perspective and what that would look like. Is there any other caveats that you'd add to that?
The only caveat that I might suggest is, even without that complete level of buy-in from the higher ups that are allowing that to transpire, technically, hang on. It wouldn't necessarily stop the people in these roles from doing a swatch test themselves by following some of our process, as long as they've already met how they're currently measured as a mini pilot within their day. So, for example, we've already helped people in our DMs every day by just literally writing out, do this, say this, have these conversations, get this information, and they're getting to the deal room. So that might look like, if they're currently measured right now for blasting the phones and getting a certain amount of meetings in their calendars that they've got to push to somebody else to get to those opportunities, is there anything really stopping them from also doing 15, 20, 30 minutes of a day in those call sessions, if they've got a good connect rate, with some of the stuff that we're talking about, just to compare? So what's the worst thing that's going to happen is if they get the information to get to the deal room faster than their existing process of what they're measured. The company.
So you're just talking about split testing and what they're already doing is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah? So I'm not saying go against how you're currently measured. Please don't use me as an example and go against every single person and just say you're wrong and you guys don't know what you're talking about and you guys don't have any commercial. No, anyway, I'm joking. Please don't anyone think I'm serious. But breaking the records breaking the rules across the funnel is probably not where you want to play. But what you do want to play with is in getting the fruits from some examples to show, but I did this and it was a more efficient process. Is there a chance, leadership, that I could do more of this and less of the other, and we could increase the results while you're decreasing your running costs? So I think that's an easier conversation to have.
So a practical way of saying, okay, I've tried this in the background, not, shout it from the hilltops. These were the results, and then you've got something practical you can go to the board with and say, right, okay, this is the difference this would make. Yes, it is a mini, like a POC, proof of concept. You can do that and then go to senior leadership, or maybe to higher up, maybe the CEO. Do you think you actually need to have buy-in from the whole C-suite? And if so, who do you think is most important? Why are you laughing?
I'll tell you offline.
Secrets.
Honestly, okay, that really depends. And George and I aren't suggesting just break the rules and get fired. We're suggesting maybe do a little bit of mix in both by doing the split test to get the result and just see if that works for you. Here's an example of why that might work for you. Yesterday, we had some messages relating to someone that was actually trying this within their current process as like a little bit of a swatch test, right?
Yeah.
What they noticed was the pressure was off.
Could you explain what the swatch test is, please?
Okay. So we've got a business development manager in a aligned market with Australia Pacific. They're currently in a national business development role. They're currently tasked on putting meetings in diaries in relation to a service, right? They came to us. We had a quick call. I've discussed with them, have you tried some of these catalogs? And perhaps then you could also then discuss what other additional services, because they're also in an MSP space, like multiple service providers, right?
Yeah.
Just from trying this for 30 minutes a day, the difference of how they approach those calls versus the calls where they're forced to push people into a sell the meeting process, their immediate feedback was, wow, it doesn't feel like I'm selling. I'm just having conversations with people to find out information that would probably win me the deal anyway. There's no pressure.
Helping people.
Correct. So, yeah, that was just a real life example that's happened since Friday and this week, so 3 days. They've noticed a considerable difference just from doing that 30 minutes a day.
Wow. Well, that is a small investment at low risk, which I'm sure most senior managers would sort of be clapping in the background, I'm sure.
Well, it's going to get a result faster, isn't it? And they're going to be in a better position to not feel so pressured. But just a quick caveat, any American people that are listening to this, please don't come at me and say that you're going to smash the phones for 30 minutes in an American market. I understand your connect rate's probably 9%. You'd probably speak to one person. So we're not suggesting... We're speaking in the markets of where we have a relatively high connect rate and we know the data is good. They were able to achieve that by having probably 5 conversations in the first 30 minutes as a comparison. So, yeah. Just thought I'd throw that in there before I get attacked. But you know what LinkedIn is like.
You're talking about the whole world. You're going to get attacked somewhere. It doesn't matter where you go.
Yeah.
I think there was... I used to, when I went through university, I was cold calling. I suppose you'd call them high net worth individuals, but they were financial institutions in Germany, which don't exactly love cold calling anyway. So you can't do that in Germany anymore, but you can if you get permission. And I was the dude that had to get permission to allow them to call, which is not fun, but I think the thing is once you find something that then works and you just realize that, okay, that small thing can make a difference, that does then have, I think this is the main thing that I'd like to communicate to everybody is it does make a practical difference to the bottom line. And you're not then having customers that walk through the door that don't really know what's going on, where they're going, what they've received. And that I think is something that they don't see, that this is actually then just the thin edge of the wedge. The bigger in the background is then that compounding goodwill that spreads out in the market, because even those that don't say, right, no, not me at the moment, we don't need you, that they've had a good conversation with a person that's given them valuable information. So George, I'd just like to sort of hear from your experience, how much of a difference does that make sort of on the human side of things?
Oh, enormous. I mean, if you have experience talking to someone that's like a potential customer, and if they have heard about you before, if they've engaged with you before, if they've come across your brand, that conversation is made so much easier. Having done that, like you ask any salesperson, the difference in having a conversation where someone's heard of your brand versus not, it's stark. It's enormous. And that's why we're such huge advocates of trying to get your subject matter experts out there as well, so people can become familiar with you, your brand, see you as thought leaders and genuine consultants in the space. So you can have a proper conversation. Even anecdotally for us, most conversations I have, Gav, with people that want to do business with us, they say, oh my God, I'm so used to your voice from listening to you on your podcast. And it's the funniest thing, but like they almost, I don't want to say starstruck is horrible. I'm not I'm not a star. I'm just a guy. I'm a whatever.
What did we talk about earlier, George?
But it honestly, it makes such an enormous difference to the way people perceive you, because you're positioned as that trusted advisor already, which makes every conversation you have beyond that easier. I'm sure you guys have experienced this too as people who are very active on LinkedIn.
I think the one thing that's I hear a lot, I've heard a lot in the years that I've been sort of fixing these problems, is that people will then go and say, you were saying what I was thinking before I said it.
Yeah.
Which is a bit distressing, I find, that they find that people listen to them unusual. So I suppose, maybe Adam, maybe one from you. I mean, you've obviously been banging that drum for for a long time. But, and we've talked about the practicalities, how you start split testing, etc. But if you had to give sort of like one piece of advice to somebody to say, right, okay, I've got a real tough nut to crack. I've done all that. We put a case together, but I'm still, the typical thing, especially the bigger the organization is. And by the way, just so everybody's clear, I've worked for organizations from like 70 people up to about 10,000. And once you get beyond 100 people, that type of resistance can be, at least from a psychological perspective, quite strong. So what would you recommend, like it's just like, okay, if they're still umming and ahhing, would there be any way you'd suggest that would push them over the line? A sensible question that maybe get them to question their belief.
I guess, good question. I guess that through following these fundamentals, we're probably trying to alleviate that from transpiring, right? So the better that you're leaning into doing these types of fundamentals, that would have been covered off in advance. So if they're inviting, if you've got permission to come back and show them something, if you've got permission to then come back and get to the RFP, if you've got permission for a request for quote, if you've got permission to then be invited to the bid process, if you've got permission to then go further than that and do a live quoting day, if you've got permission to then go and do a live walk around, so anything over probably 150 people, as you'd be aware when you were in a company that we spoke about in Sydney. If they're doing a live walk around, I'm telling you right now, you're in the top 3. So if they're coming to your premise to see the operation, they're not wasting their own time with their C-suite. So I guess what George and I are trying to convey, and what a lot of people do
that
say,
should give them a certain amount of confidence that, yes, I think this is something that people miss, is that if they've walked into your house, that gives you a certain amount of confidence that is already actually a buy-in and an investment in yourselves in quite strong. It's like, so you never get in a car just to drive to Sydney, for example. If you're in Brisbane, it's a long way, and the UK. But any sort of thing where a person turns up in person, and I think people miss that fact. So what would you say to that? Do you think that's something you see?
I think there's a slight caveat there. You've got to remember that a lot of the fundamentals that George and I are speaking about, and we've amalgamated in this process to make it push button easy, a lot of the organizations in industry sectors haven't seen this before because they've been so hoodwinked by sales-led growth. So they maybe also haven't seen.
Could you just define what sales-led growth is, please? Just
so if you're just solely working on mass contacts to meeting to opportunity ratios, you wouldn't be doing the fundamentals that we're speaking about here. So therefore, you wouldn't have understood the deal stages and recognized where you were in that process. If you've got past the live quoting day and they've come back to do a live walk around within your organization, you wouldn't know what some of those deal stage cues are because you wouldn't have done the fundamentals to get you there. So,
you'd never seen it before.
Correct. So I'm trying to remember, like, to articulate that some of the stuff that we're speaking about right here, to answer this question, they may not even recognize that they don't know what they don't know. So that's also tricky to navigate if they've never seen or had one of those walkarounds before. If they've come from a subscription world, it's just sales-led growth, I guarantee you they don't do any of these things. So they'd have absolutely no idea what that Q meant. So you've got to, unless you're coming from large contract acquisitions like talent management contract above 5,000 FTE, or you're doing big finance company to company, that type of world, 401k, superannuation, funds, etc., then you would know what this stuff means. And this would be your bread and butter. And you would know, okay, if they've come back after the live quoting day, we've done what that looks like, and they're coming to do a walk around, we're in the top 3. But to anyone outside of these and that understands what we're saying here, this is going to be brand new to them, Gav.
Yeah,
so
there's no feedback, is there? There's no loop.
Have the pattern recognition of the deal stage of the queue. Shit, this means we're at the final 3. So I guess
it's easy when you stood in a car park and they're coming to your office. It's not easy when you do. I think certainly from some of the organizations I've seen, they don't realize where they are because they get no feedback, because it's all of it's on stuff like this, on Zoom or on whatever. And you're missing that human interaction, physical interaction. So you don't realize what environment you've just stepped into. It's sort of closed off to the people, I think.
Yes, but if it is virtual, but that's also why it's vitally important to step out the communication plan. If you don't know what the serviceability is going to look like in terms of how you're going to service that client to do fulfillment, how do you know what the questions you're going to navigate if you're going to have serviceability at customer success?
Yeah,
which is why we're seeing most of these problems at customer success and high churn rate. For a while there, unless we can solve this problem, we could literally rename customer success the graveyard.
I'm thinking, for at least for certain companies, it is. George, your take on that, mate? I mean, I know it's probably going to be, obviously what Adam's just said, but is there anything you'd like to add?
It'll be better than what I said. Don't worry about
that. Would you mind reframing the original question, if that's okay?
Yeah, so we were talking, I asked if they have done the split tests and they've still got some sort of resistance, because with many organizations, the bigger they get, the more invested they are in making sure they're basically covering their own backside, which is fair enough. If this is your family, you're looking after your young kids, and they're about to suggest, even though they've got, done a small POC, done a split test, they've got some data, what would be one thing you just suggest to them? Say, right, okay, this is how we'd sort of push it over the line to take that risk and take that first step.
I mean, I guess from a marketing lens, you've got to appeal to what their own internal motivations are. I think you already touched on that, Gav. So you got to, at the end of the day, like, we have to make them feel safe and secure and let them know that we're not going to let them down with this system. From I suppose, like a marketing lens, often that comes a lot from your positioning and reassuring people that, okay, we might not be the big name incumbent that everyone, wants, but we are positioned to uniquely service you and your specific needs, and not just to help your business reach that goal that it wants, but to help you reach your own personal goals, whether that be a promotion, helping you progress in your career, whatever that is. Like, that's what we need to speak to. And so that goes back into your marketing, right? Like the messaging that we're putting out there, the content that we're putting out there, it's all designed to lead people to feel safe with us, and overcome that whole thing about, why nobody gets fired for buying IBM. It's all just comes down to that trust. And the more that we understand people on a personal level and help them achieve their own aspirations and align that with the business case too, that's where you get your best chance of success.
So he told you.
And with that bombshell, we can wrap it up. So, but just before we go, to make sure that so where can we find you two ruffians on the internet? And is there anything in particular I'd like to say that I haven't been asking you, something I should have asked you? What would that be?
Maybe ask Adam how much he was lifting in the gym today.
Oh, wow. Hang on, anyone that has dug up any old bodybuilding photos, it's all show and no go.
Right, okay, I'll scrap that question.
No, Gav, no. I do have, Gav, I do have something for those that are tuning in. Adam and I actually put together like a 5-part mini series on this, where we do go into deep detail on our framework. It's free, ungated. It's just written out for people to go ahead and take it. As Adam said, just through conversations we have with people in DMs where we start telling them about this system, they're really starting to get some good outcomes from it. It's because it's simple, it's easy to action, and it's just based on like the fundamentals of how people operate. So that's on the b2bplaybook.com. Just scroll through the blog until you start to see Adam's face. Yeah, it's our 5-part mini series. Maybe we can link to it somewhere as well, but free.
I'll drop it in the comments, so it's easy for everybody, George. Don't worry.
Great.
I will be blowing that horn with in the comments to make sure that we've got all the links, everybody. Right. Okay. And with that, we'll wrap this one up. Thank you very much for watching. I know that this is going to be a replay session because I've already had people asking, as usual, because you guys are on the other side of the world in comparison to my audience. So people will say, is there a replay? I say, yes, there is. So with that, I'll make sure I've this on my profile. You can go there, find it here. And I'll see you on the next one. And George, Adam, thank you very much for attending. Really appreciate it. Fantastic conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us, Gav. And thank you for being so accommodating with the time. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks.